There was some feedback or some indications that Mike Schneider at the Intermountain region may have told the park what their position is. Have you talked to Mike about what?
I have talked to Mike, and I've been in most of those meetings.
Right.
And the way that positions are developed on park issues is really a dialogue between the park employees, the park superintendent, and the Intermountain region, and on issues that have some real interest, kind of outside the park. That dialogue takes place all the time. So that's kind of the way things have been working down there, and there's been a real good, I think, dialogue between the park and the regional office about really what needs to happen.
Okay. Is this this is a dialogue that consists of a series of meetings that's already been held on the road? Well,
we've had a series of meetings and phone conversations, and we're constant touch with the superintendent and just trying to make sure that we're well informed about what's going on, and if she's got concerns and issues, she can raise them with us.
Okay. Is the final decision a local Chaco Park position, or is the Intermountain region have kind of an overall overview, or can trump the park's decision on it, or how is this decision made?
Well, it's important to understand that the road at this point is a county road, and it goes through BLM lands, state lands, and Navajo tribal lands, and it's the Park Service doesn't have a real seat at the table until unless and until compliance is triggered, and that is that the federal laws are kicked in, the National Environmental Policy Act, which then might require a environmental impact statement or environmental assessment of the work being done. And at that point, then the Park Service as a federal agency would have some input into the process.
Right. In the meantime, is there any preparation for any kind of study of what the impact of the road would be on visitation and on the park?
Well, I mean, we don't know yet. There's been some studies that have compared other parks where paving has taken place, but this is a pretty unique situation. It's a very rural park located a long way away from population centers. The road is in tough shape in rainy weather. It's really slick and muddy, and but there's also the question of the wash there. There's not a bridge over the wash, and when there's water flowing through that, you can't pass the road anyway. So I think we need to look carefully at what we think the impacts might be on the park, but I don't think right now we have a lot of good solid data to tell us what those impacts might be.
Okay. Is data going to be collected before the road is started, or is it going to be collected only after like there's an environmental impact statement?
Well, I think actually the process of developing the environmental impact statement and the alternatives that it requires largely involves that kind of collection of data and trying to see what the impacts might be. The park has had a pretty significant fluctuations of visitation over time, from a high of 80,000 people a year to now it's around 70,000 people a year, and the park has been able to accommodate those kinds of fluctuations. And we just, I think at this point, really don't know what the road improvements might do to increasing visitation in the park.
Is the idea to wait until the road is actually established? Because that's a concern by some of the people, is that the park is just going to wait passively until the road is completed, and then it's going to deal with the aftermath of visitation after it's a done fact.
I mean, I think the park has looked at some studies that have been done, and I think the park is actively interested in what those impacts might be. But as you can imagine, it's sort of difficult to determine what the additional impacts might be. I mean, how are you going to measure absent actual traffic, who might come to the park if the road were improved and who might not, or if any additional people would come to the park if the road were improved.
Okay. If it develops where the road is installed and the resurfacing is installed, and the park finds itself, it's got more visitation, is there funds available to expand facilities out there, like the parking lot, and restrooms?
Well, it's not probably a question of expansion facilities. It's how do you handle the fluctuations in visitation? And in places like Mesa Verde, they have put mechanisms in place where they've been able to control flow of traffic to the things through ticketing, tours, and things like that. And we'll just have to see as this kind of unfolds what those impacts might be. At this point, it's very difficult to determine.
Okay. Because I think it's kind of the information's out there that the Park Service is kind of very budgeted, and it's difficult to get new resources in the parks, and I think that's a concern by some of the people too, is that there's no provision financially to change that park or to make that park more suitable for increased visitation. So,
well, we're a federal agency and we're funded by Congress, and we work with Congress to address problems and issues as they come along. And so I think if this got to that level where we needed to address something serious like that, we'd work with Congress and try to figure out a solution, develop a solution that would work. Our mandate is really clear. We need to protect these resources unimpaired for future generations. And that's what the American people and Congress want us to do. And that's what we will do. It's just a question of what's the best way to go about doing that.
There was a question over the road in that I got some information that actually part of the road was initiated by the park itself. That there was kind of there was one leg of the road that the park on its own just went in there and bladed another road around that area in there, and then that linked up with an established road. I don't know if you've heard anything like this.
Boy, I really haven't. At one time there was a different access to the park.
Right.
Through a different road. I think that's now closed.
Right.
And this one was opened up, and that was actually in large measure to help protect the resources of the park and to direct traffic inside the park in a way that was more manageable. But about the park blading the road, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's history that I know.
It's kind of a strange history in that there was a house out there, and what happened, I think the road went close to somebody's property, and then the superintendent decided to divert the road around that area. There was a question of whether that part of since it was created by the federal government, is actually a federal road.
Boy, I just don't have the history.
Right. Okay. So let me kind of digress and kind of summarize in that,
Sure.
that at this point it's the county's responsibility, and I guess they got federal money for the last 15 miles of it, and when that federal money kicks in, the NEPA process might start. There might be an EIS statement, and then the park would have input. If there's a scoping meeting or there's a meeting somewhere, that the park would have an input at that meeting. Correct,
and there generally is a series of not just scoping meetings, but opportunities to comment and review and have input, and so that'd be fine. And they're also working. The county, I think, is working with the State Historic Preservation Office to make sure that they address that office's concerns and interests.
Yeah.
So they're getting that input as well.
Okay. The park wouldn't just be passive in an EIS statement. It would take a position, right?
I think what would happen is that the park would look at the work that was being done, at the alternatives that were being laid out. There's usually a no action alternative, and then one or two other alternatives, and one of those would probably, I'm sure, be doing whatever improvements they went to the road, and the park would assess that and have their input about what they think the impact of that would be on their resources specifically. Yeah.
Is this an ongoing process with the Intermountain region? Are you talking to Barbara West, and Barbara West is talking to you guys?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it does come up in meetings, and it's kind of a developing process. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
Pleasure talking.